Hi guys, and welcome back to a new episode with me, the Omega Enthusiast. Recently, there is an interesting and captivating article wrote by Cole Paddington from Hodinkee about the legendary vintage Universal Geneve Polerouter. I have the link to this article in the description box below for anyone who's interested. There is a short video clip included that provides some great information about the history of Polerouter as well. The purpose of my video is to point out significant mechanical and cosmetic issues that may come with the Polerouter watch that no one has advice about. Universal Geneve first introduced the Polerouter watch in 1954, the same year when Longines first launched their Conquest model. The Polerouter design is also the first design created by Gerard Genta. When you hear the name Gerard Genta, you hear the word legend. Some of his very famous masterpieces are the Patek Philippe Nautilus, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and the highly renowned Omega Constellation Dogleg case model. As a starter entry point vintage watch, the Polerouter is definitely on the list. However, since Hodinkee has wrote an article about it, the prices may suddenly go up. Before you fall into this hype, I would like to point out a few possible flaws that may come with the Polerouter watch. There are many Polerouter models out there, but for this video, I'm going to focus on the basic models. How one evaluates the value of a Polerouter can be applied to another brand name as well. The first thing that I would like to point out is the case finish. This may not be a concern to some people, and that is many of these Polerouter have been polished. According to my research on their value, a polished Polerouter can devalue the watch by about half its actual value. It is more obvious to see a polished gold case than one in full steel. Typically, when someone polished the case of a watch, the case back will also be polished at the same process. When it comes to the Polerouter models with the Bombay type lugs, the case back finish originally came with inscription. The fine print on the case back is where you can locate the model number and the case serial number to date the watch. There's also the Universal Geneve logo on majority of these case back. It would be challenging to date your watch or figure out its model without this crucial information on the case back. Next, we look at the crown of a Polerouter. It is quite common for a Polerouter to come with a replacement generic crown. Unlike a vintage Omega or Rolex watch, locating a replacement original signed Universal Geneve crown is very difficult. This is something that you should take into consideration. However, if a signed crown is not important to you, then this is not a concern. Third on the list can affect the authenticity of the watch, and that is the dial. There are two different kinds of concern to look for when it comes to examining the dial. If the dial has been refinished, it will devalue the watch as much as a case polish. Worst case is when the dial has been swapped between models. For example, the dial of a Bombay lug model can be swapped with one from a regular thick lug model. Bombay lug model will not say jet after the word Polerouter. If it does, your watch is a Frankenstein piece. The final thing that I would like to point out will be the movement. Depending on the model and age of your Polerouter, the movement type can be a bumper automatic or Microrotor automatic. Bumper automatic is used on the earlier Polerouter watches. They are great movements when they are in great shape. The cool thing about a bumper automatic movement is that you can feel it while wearing the watch on your wrist. By that, I mean you can feel the bumper weight bouncing from one side to the other side as you move your wrist. The disadvantages of a bumper automatic movement are 1. The automatic self-winding is only in one direction, which means it will require the weight to self-wind many more times in comparison to a regular automatic for the mainspring to be fully wind. Number 2, since the weight only rotates in about 270 degrees, it will require more wrist movement for the watch to self-wind. And number 3, the winding yoke and driving gear combination is another concern. Whether you plan on buying a piece in as-is or fully serviced condition, it is best to kindly ask the seller to make sure this part is in good working order. If it is not, the automatic system will have a difficult time allowing the weight to easily swing back and forth to wind the watch. When Universal Geneve discontinued the bumper automatic, they introduced the Microrotor automatic movement to the Polerouter watches. Microrotor automatic is unique due to the small automatic weight placed on one side to create a thinner automatic watch. Universal Geneve is not the only brand with this type of movement. And in case you wonder how well does a weight of this size self-wind? Well, the weight is quite heavy for its size and consists of a few ball bearings to help it freely rotate. Therefore, with the slightest wrist movement will be enough to spin the rotor. The disadvantage of a microrotor movement is the rotor system itself. When this rotor is worn, this can be a big job to repair and may even need a replacement, which can be costly. There are a few different microrotor caliber for Universal Geneve, and they all have this related issue. There are 3 ways to figure out this issue, 2 of which you can identify by looking at the photo, while the other will require you to ask the seller or have the watch on hand. If you have the watch on hand, you can simply shake it vertically and horizontally and listen. A worn rotor will produce a clinking or scratching noise inside. It is not a pleasant sound when you hear it and is louder than usual. If you have an image of the inside of the watch, there are 2 places to examine to make sure the rotor is in good shape or not. The first thing to examine is the surface edge of the rotor. If you can see sign of surface wear, then the rotor is in bad shape. Notice on this movement, the rotor is worn and is showing some play, but no signs of surface wear. Therefore, the second thing to examine is the inside of the case back. If there's a circular sign of a scratch mark shape of the rotor, then you know the rotor is in bad shape. That's the end of this video, but there's one other thing that I would like to point out, and that is a very fine Polerouter is quite difficult to locate as majority are situated in a collector's personal collection. If you guys enjoyed this video, please support this channel by hitting on that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss out on any of my future episodes. If you have any question or comment, please leave them in the comment section below. You can also support my work on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.